All right, good morning, everyone. I just wanted to introduce right now Hannah and Evan. They're with Blue Jay Media, and they're going to be walking around the room today, taking some pictures. They're going to be videotaping as well. So anyone who's registered, you will get emailed a link to the video. My name is Susan Greco, and I am a senior downsizing project manager, as well as a easy button to downsizing. And I am a certified senior housing professional as well, which gives me the skills to specialize in working with the unique needs of seniors. Total Senior Solutions is actually a system for working with seniors and their families as their lifestyle and housing needs change. It can be 12 to 18 months of preparation before moving, and I can guide you through the entire process. So why are we here? Total Senior Solutions series is to educate people about the legal, financial, housing, medical, and other general issues and topics of importance. We will not try to sell you anything. We challenge you to ask yourself, who will be tasked in making the decisions for you if you are no longer able to do so yourself? And will you agree with the decisions that they make? I am the moderator for Total Senior Solutions series, and I'm excited that you're here today. I wanted to thank my educational partners for being here today. And if you haven't already met them, at the end, if you could go and introduce yourself and meet them and find out what they do, that would be wonderful. And I've already given you the housekeeping things, so that's good. And as you know, the topic today is the truth about aging in place. We'll end sharply at 11:30 unless we run out of questions before then. And so let's get started. So first I want to ask my panelists to introduce themselves and tell us who you are and what you do.
Good morning, everybody. I have the microphone, so I'm going first. My name is Brandon Jones, and I'm president of a company called Gold Seal Services. We are a home maintenance, repair, and modification company. So I'm a certified aging in place specialist. I've been doing this for about 22 years, focusing on modifications to homes and renovations. I have trained and have a fair amount of experience working with people who are looking to stay in their homes as they continue through life and through the aging process. So I'm able to evaluate homes, work alongside an occupational therapist or not, and look at the types of modifications that we need as we go through that progression. So those are things that change over time, and we'll talk a little bit about that today, but I'm able to evaluate that from the position where we are and also help people look towards the future to understand what it is that they may need as we go forward in life.
Good morning.
You got it. You're good.
Thanks. It doesn't sound like it up here. Yeah, it doesn't. Steve Gale, Business Development Coordinator with the Option Group. So we are a group of concierge, social worker, and nurse case managers, life care managers. We help folks that are living in the community get connected with services that they need to allow them to stay primarily in their homes safely, or wherever it is that they call home. So we connect folks with services of all of our partners that are in here today and all of the educational partners with Total Senior Solutions to help keep folks as independent as possible by connecting them with home modification teams, home care services, transportation services, anything that they need to kind of keep them going, and we consult and quarterback that situation for the families to save time of looking for who the experts are in that region, in that genre. We do the research on the back end to streamline that process and make it simple and easy for the families that work with us.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for coming, and Susan, thanks for having us. My name is Tom Smith. I work with Family and Nursing Care. It's a private duty home care company, which we're going to get into a lot more detail later on, so I'll save you from that now. But bottom line is we provide a little extra help. We provide certified nursing assistants to help people who need a little extra help in their apartments, whether that's private homes or senior living communities. We've been around 56 years now. We've been around since 1968 and service pretty much anywhere from Montgomery, Prince George's, Howard, Baltimore City, Baltimore County, a little bit of Carroll, and a little bit of Anne Arundel. So pretty much all of Central Maryland. In my personal background, I am a licensed social worker. I don't do much social work anymore, but it does help when I'm talking to our clients and talking to families. So I keep that license active, and I've been at Family Nurse Care for almost 10 years now.
Great, thank you very much. As I mentioned, today we're going to discuss the challenges sometimes associated with getting older, specifically transportation, housing, personal assistance, and social connections. So we're going to start with the issues of home modification. So Brandon, I'm going to ask you this. What does aging in place mean exactly?
Well, I spoke a little bit about this a second ago, but aging in place is a transition. It is something that happens over time as we age. We're all aging. We're all at some point in the aging process. What we'd like to think about is we'd like to think about the aging in place as a non-urgent issue. So we have different types of things that we understand when we have to modify a home. There are urgent issues, there are traumatic issues, and then there are non-urgent issues. So we're all here today, we're all dealing likely with non-urgent issues. And the modifications that we can make to prepare ourselves prevent us from getting into a position where we might face an urgent issue, where we have a trip, we have a fall, we have something that happens to us that causes an injury, and at that point we're dealing with a traumatic injury. In an aging in place environment, the subject of aging in place can get pretty dreary pretty fast. Believe me, I've been through a lot of training on this, and the subject of the conversation can get pretty dreary, but it's not really a dreary issue at all if you think about it the right way. What we're talking about here is making a modification to a home that makes it easier to use, easier to live in, and also something to enjoy, something that you like, something that is elegant, something that you can live with and love the way that you love your home today, right? That's a really important thing. So I want to make sure I stress that when we talk about aging in place, and that we prevent ourselves from really getting into the dreariness of the subject of getting old. That's not what we're talking about. We're looking at transition in time. Okay?
Great. So share with everyone some easy things that people can do to successfully age in place.
Well, the easy things are, what we want to start with is we want to think about two primary things. We want to think about safety, number one, and we want to think about ease of use. And there are a lot of easy things that can be done to improve safety and ease of use that are actually very low-cost things. So we want to look at things that we may not think about every day. We start by thinking about lighting, good lamping, bulbs in our light fixtures. Those are really important things, being able to see clearly where you're going. Our eyesight changes as we get older. We want to see clearly what we're doing, where we're going. We want good task lighting. We want good general lighting. We want to look at our flooring. We want to think about where we have rugs, carpets, rugs primarily, things that can cause trip hazards. We want to think about transitions between spaces. Sometimes in our homes we might have, on a single floor of the house, single level of the house, we may have an interior step, 1-2 steps down. We want to look at those types of things. Putting in a handrail that is an elegant solution, that's easy to grip. You know, one of the clients I was working with recently, I asked them to walk through the house and I watched them step through a transition like that. What did? They grabbed onto the door casing, they held onto the jamb of the door, and they stepped down, right? And that's a normal thing to do. That's what they're used to doing, that's what they're comfortable doing, but that's not exactly the safest thing to do. So these modifications aren't always easy. You have to be creative, or you can wind up with something that's an eyesore, wind up with something that doesn't look that good, wind up with something that looks like you're living in a hospital. You don't want any of those things. These things require creative solutions. They're small things. You want to think about door knobs, turning a knob versus pushing a lever. That's a simple change to make. It's a low-cost change to make. And we can make that on a wholesale basis pretty efficiently to make it easier to move in and out of doorways. Cabinet hardware, plumbing fixtures, faucet handles, shower faucet handles. We want to look at anti-scald devices. Sometimes in our older homes we don't have those things. What's the water heater temperature set to? It doesn't cost any money I'm standing in your house, I can adjust your hot water heater temperature for no charge. You know? But in today's code, we have anti-scald devices that have to be installed in bathrooms to make sure that we don't have a situation where you could scald yourself by setting the water temperature too high. So those are things that we want to look at from a safety standpoint, and we want to look at ease of use so that we can make those simple modifications, change out your cabinet hardware. You're not changing your cabinets, you're not remodeling your kitchen, you're just changing your hardware to make it easier to grab hardware. Sometimes it's putting in accessories inside of cabinets, pull out shelves in cabinets, really low cost. Again, it's not a renovation, this is an accessory that gets installed so that you're not bending over, reaching back, those types of things. You pull out a drawer inside your cabinet and you're able to take things out easily. Overhead items. There are accessories that pull down. Those are simple to install. Microwaves that are overhead, not that safe. Microwave drawers can be installed. You pull something hot that you've heated up in a microwave out, it's over your head. It's very easy to lose control of that and spill it on yourself and scald yourself. Appliances inside kitchens. The appliances are expensive, but they're standardized sizes, so we don't have to renovate your kitchen to change an appliance. Where are the controls on the appliance? Are they in the front, or are they somewhere where you have to actually reach in the vicinity of a burner to change a setting on an appliance? French door refrigerators, as opposed to the type that we might have that we're using now, easier to open, easier to get into and out of. So these are all things that can be done to change a house without making a renovation. And there is a long list of other things that I haven't discussed so far that we could also talk about.
Great. What types of more significant modifications could someone do to make their house work for them long term?
So when we take things to the next level with regard to safety, we're always thinking about safety. We start getting into things that can involve more intensive renovations to homes. And when we look at some of the primary focal areas that we live in, our kitchens, our bathrooms, laundry rooms, access areas, where do we come in and out of the house? We can look at making solutions to getting in and out of the house that not only can be safer to use today, but if you need help, whether it's through a device, maybe at some point it's a walker or a wheelchair, or through assistance, we're able to get in and out of our home safely, easily. We're able to get in and out of a car. We're able to get in and out of a car when it's raining outside. Like how do we actually do that when it takes more time to get in and out of the car? How do we get our groceries into the house? Those are things that we want to think about when we talk about access. So we might be talking about putting a ramp in, but when I say the word ramp, I know what all of you are thinking. I don't want that in my house, right? But you would be surprised at some of the projects we've done where we're actually making a slow transition of elevation over distance. We're working with it on an architectural level to make it a very elegant solution. And we're looking at landscaping and those types of things, grading. Those are things that we can do so that it's really largely invisible. And I like to use the word invisible because when we think about the types of things we want to do, we don't want these things to jump out at us. We don't want it to jump out at us because we don't want to feel that way. We don't want it to jump out at us because we don't want our guests to look at us that way. And we don't want it to jump out at us because we don't want somebody driving down the street to say, there's somebody that I might target, unfortunately, in today's world because they seem to be an older person. That's not something we want to draw attention to. So we need to pay attention to those types of things. Then we get into kitchens and bathrooms and renovations like that. We're thinking about flooring. We want slip-resistant flooring. We can replace the flooring in a bathroom with slip-resistant tile. We actually have some samples of tile. There are 1,000. But there is a coefficient that the tile is rated with. It's a slip coefficient. And there are standards that we want to go by. So we can put a slip-resistant tile in a bathroom that looks like any other tile, and you have lots of choices, and they're beautiful. We want to think about the space in a bathroom, the layout of a bathroom. We want to think about where we can mount grab bars. Where is the commode? How can we mount a grab bar here? How can we get to it safely? What's the height of it? If we need assistance at some point in our future, is there a space where somebody can easily help us do that? and do it in a dignified way. We want to think about showers, zero clearance showers, zero threshold showers. We can walk right into a shower without having to step up or through anything. Glass doors, glass shower doors, and glass shower walls can be a problem. They can be hard to navigate through. They can be hard for at a time when we may need assistance in the future. Those are things that we want to look at. So how do we do that? We do wet rooms, where we can just walk simply in and there is no door. That's better in some cases, and it looks nicer than doing curtains, but curtains are also a viable solution. We think about having cabinetry set up in a kitchen or a bathroom where even if you don't need it right now, at some point in the future, you could remove a base cabinet. You've got finished sides already on cabinets on either side of that base cabinet. Remove the base cabinet, and you could actually be in a wheelchair and wheel right up to the cabinet with knee space. That's not something that we need to have now necessarily. That's storage space that we're giving up today. But if we're smart in a renovation and we set that up as a workspace for the future, we can get ourselves in a position where somebody can just simply come out, take the cabinet out. You already have a finished condition inside that alcove, and you can wheel up to that in a wheelchair. Along with renovations, of course, we're talking about a lot of things I've already mentioned. I can't stress enough the need for good lighting. Good lighting is paramount, and most houses that we live in do not have adequate lighting, and they don't have adequate or easy-to-use lighting controls. We lived in our houses for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. We've talked to people who lived in their house for 50 years, and they have lighting switch controls, and they have switch banks. You know what I mean by a switch bank? There could be 5, 10 switches that you have to remember. Which switches control what, and you're on and off and on and off and on and off, different times of day and night. It sounds intimidating, and it's especially intimidating when this isn't how we've lived our lives, but there are lighting control systems that are easy to push, name on a button that says good morning. You push a good morning button, all the lighting sets to a preset level. So your general lighting, your under cabinet lighting, your task focused lighting, all that sets to a specific level. And these lighting control systems change with the day. So as the sun changes over the course of the day, the lighting changes with it. And that's a pretty impressive and powerful thing. When I started using these things about 15, 20 years ago, it could cost you $100,000 to put a system like that in place. And it is not that way anymore. It's a few $1,000s and you have a brain. And then after that, you individually change switches, and they cost about $175 a piece to change. And they tie together wirelessly. So you can put a lighting control system in your house that can expand as you need it. So I put a switch in, that's on the system. The switch down the hall is not on the system. Later on, you say, I'd love to have it on the system. Come out and replace that switch, it's on the system. The system can grow. But these things are very easy to use. It's a little bit of a hurdle to get over to say I'm not flipping a switch on and off. But they're very easy to use, and they're very graphic to understand what they do. But by presetting and working with you to set it the way that you like it, and then using its brain to work with the change of the day and change of season. So it's not just the day, right? It changes season with you too. So it constantly adjusts and modifies to what's going on in the environment. Really, really powerful. That is not only functional use, but it's also safety, right? So we want to think about all those types of things, and they stretch beyond the replacing of doorknobs and putting in of handrails and grab bars and those types of things. These are things that stretch beyond that. But they are the things that can make your house a place that you can live in long term. And so when you think about what you're investing in, you love where you are. You may have raised children. You may have lived there for 30 years. You love where you are. You want to stay where you are. You can stay where you are. So what are you going to invest in? Are you going to invest in a move? Are you going to invest in downsizing? Or are you going to invest in a lot of things that you find precious to you that you may not be able to take with you? Or are we going to look at staying in the house where we are and making these types of changes and making this something that you not only feel comfortable with, but that you actually really love, that you enjoy? The things that we put in are things that you like. They are a renovation. There's something to enjoy and savor as you go through your day. So I really, really want to stress, and it's important that everybody thinks about that. Because when we show up to a place like this, and we're in an aging in place conversation, and we're thinking about all those things, we get caught up in what we think is the downside of aging. Like, oh my God, I'm gonna need this, I'm gonna need that. Like, I'm not gonna be able to move as well, I'm not gonna be, I might need help someday, all that type of stuff. Stop thinking about it like that. Let's think about it as a really positive change that could be made in your life now for your future.
So sometimes people find themselves unable to drive at some point, either temporarily or permanently. So to get around, they need some alternative options. So let's talk about that. What are some of those options?
I think you can really go down a rabbit hole a little bit with transportation. There are a lot of options when you're talking about transportation, depending what you need exactly. To kind of start at our level and work over, part of a care manager service does include transportation. It's a fee that you pay a care manager to do, but that's part of their service. If you talk to home health teams that do transportation, their caregivers often also do that service. That's included in their fee, and I'll let Tom touch more specifically on that side of it. Then we can talk about programs that are maybe provided by the county. If there's a county ride program, many areas offer services like this that are low or no cost, depending where you are and what the needs are. And then I think when families think about transportation, the low-hanging fruit usually is family and friends that are going to, cart you around when you need to be. That gets dicey because, we know our families love us, our friends love us, but they do have their lives as well. And when we go to a conversation like aging in place, sometimes that could be a little too much for a family and friend situation to be able to do safely or efficiently. For instance, even on a care manager side of things, our care managers can only do transportation for folks that can get in and out of vehicles that don't require a wheelchair lift. So at that point, if we needed more, we would have to partner and find a resource in the community that could provide that type of service. Of course, the upside would be having a nurse or social worker be able to accompany you to appointments. But say you just needed transportation to go to the grocery store or go shopping. That might not be the best option for you. Maybe at that point you do look at a separate option like a home health care service, a CNA, GNA to go with you. Still want to make sure you're safe, but you might not need a medical specialist to be with you. And not to jump ahead, but we also have some third-party options that are out there like Uber, Lyft, taxis still. Uber, Lyft, taxis. But again, with that, you want to ensure your safety in those scenarios too. There's no background checks. I'm sure there are, but maybe not to the extent that you might think or want to get in somebody's car with like that. So really, the options are plentiful, but all kind of based on each individual situation and what you might need. If you want to touch on the home care CNA portion.
Yeah, I have one other question.
Sure.
So because there are some limitations to the services just mentioned, what are some alternative solutions that people need to know about? And share any tips, cautions, or important issues they need to know about using these types of solutions.
Sure. So I that's where I was probably jumping ahead a little bit with the Uber, Lyft options. I'm always careful in those scenarios myself. I think it's great to be cautious. Now with those, they're mostly done via phone apps, so that's maybe a bit of a limitation sometimes for that. Again, you don't necessarily know who you're getting in the car with, even though you get a rating for a driver that comes to you. If you call a taxi, you don't really get any information about that type of situation. You don't have any kind of escort to wherever you're heading to assist you. There's no door-to-door service. That would be the limitation on the third parties that I see. compared to working with whether it be a care manager, a caregiver, even a family or friend at that point.
Perfect. Now, Tom?
Do you want me to touch on that piece first?
Yes, please.
Sure. So with transportation with our caregivers, the biggest benefit is if you're not safe on your own, if you need help getting in and out of the car to and from a lot of times, even if I drop you off at the curb, you got to walk into the building, get in an elevator, then walk down to the hallway to the office. So the benefit is you have a CNA with you. The other benefit that our families love is sometimes when mom and dad go to the doctor, they don't get the most accurate information. So if a caregiver is there taking notes, the adult children they actually know what the doctor told mom and dad. So that's another benefit. The downside is, and Steve and I were actually talking about this earlier, if you don't really need that much help, if you really just need a ride, it kind of pains me to pay, whatever, $30-some an hour just to have somebody drive you and then wait for you, then drive you home. So that's where you really want to look into those alternative options. You don't want to just pay, I work for the company, but you don't want to just pay to have somebody sitting around while you're, because I don't know about you guys, but my doctor, I could be in the waiting room for 3 hours before I get seen. So, but that's really the benefit of having a caregiver go with you. As far as transportation goes with our caregivers.
Great, thank you. So Tom, as an in-home care and personal assistance provider, share with us what non-medical in-home care or personal assistance services include.
So I will answer this, but there is a laundry list that we put together. It's called our caregiver task sheet that I have in the back, because it is quite a bit. So all our caregivers are certified nursing assistants, so CNAs. Most of them are GNAs as well, which just is an extra, it's a geriatric nursing assistant, which is a little extra certification. We call it custodial care. It really is helping with activities of daily living, which can mean showers, meal prep, or literally help you if you need your food cut up, or if you literally can't get the food to your mouth, they can literally feed you. It can be transfers from the bed to a wheelchair, from a bed just to stand up and then get to a walker. It can be from the wheelchair then to because you don't want to sit in a wheelchair all day. So it can be a wheelchair to a lazy boy or some sort of recliner. It can be getting to and from the bathroom. And that can literally be hands-on, or we also have standby assist, especially like showers. If you're, for the most part, safe in a shower, a lot of people don't want somebody else in the bathroom with them. So we kind of crack the door and the caregiver will stand right outside the door. We call that standby assist. And that way if something does happen, they can hear it and be right there. It could be transportation, we talked about that. Light housekeeping, they can do laundry, they can make the bed, any room that the client spends a lot of time in, bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, living room, they can clean those areas, dust, sweep, mop, vacuum. And then there's a whole companionship aspect of it where, talk, read a book. A lot of our clients still like to read newspapers. I think they still actually print some of them. But so the caregivers will actually read the newspaper to some of our clients. Go for a walk. It's awesome out today. Like that perfect day to go for a walk if you're able to. Even just sitting on the porch and talking, getting fresh air. So it is quite a bit. So if you name it, they can probably pretty much do it. I will touch on it. We say non-medical, and a lot of people this is kind of one of the questions you want to ask. A lot of people get home health and home care confused. Home health is going to be your PT, OT, and all your kind of we call them skilled services. So if you need any type of wound care or injections, unfortunately our caregivers do not do that, but there are companies that we partner with and can refer you to whenever you need those type of services.
Great, thank you. And what can someone expect to pay for the type of services that you're talking about?
The $1 million question that I get every phone call. So, yeah, right. It's literally the $1 million question. So I'm not naive to the fact it is not cheap. It is usually going to cost you anywhere from $32 to $37 an hour. And the next question will kind of get into some of the other questions you want to ask. If there's a company that does offer short hours, like 1 or 2 hours, you're going to be paid probably in the 40s. The other unfortunate piece is insurance does not cover private duty home care. If you have long-term care insurance, that is the only insurance that does. And usually even then, you have to have some sort of elimination period, which just means you might have to have care for 3 months, and then they'll start paying. So that is the unfortunate part. It is not cheap, but yeah, you're looking at probably anywhere from like $32 to $37 an hour.
Great. What should people remember to ask when interviewing companies offering this assistance?
So there's a couple big ones, and I'll go over those first. First and foremost, there is, I'll try not to confuse you. There really is 2 models that are in this, well, technically kind of 3. The two main models that are in the state of Maryland are, there's a registry model, which just means the caregivers are independent contractors. We actually have this model, but only in our Montgomery County office. And we still do all the same background checks, and we require them to carry their own professional liability insurance, but they are independent contractors. This particular model is kind of weaning away and going away. I think a lot of people are not comfortable with that insurance piece, and and there's no like nurse oversight, to be honest with you. You're getting a caregiver, and we, like if you were to call us and there was an issue, we could replace them and give you somebody else off the registry. But there's really nobody, it's almost like just hiring a private hire. You see those signs on the side of the road, it's like, hey, private hire, call this number. It's a step up from that, but it's like an in-between. The model that is most popular is the employee model, and that just means the caregivers are actual employees of the company. So you do want to ask if it's an independent contractor or an employee. Some people don't care. The employee model does come with a nurse oversight. The nurse comes out and does an assessment. It does a very minimal of it'll like check the rugs and that sort of thing just to make sure the environment's safe. And they'll do an assessment on what the caregiver actually has to help the clients with. So that's the first big one. You want to make sure, and you may not care, and independent contractors can be great if you don't need that nurse oversight, and it's usually a couple dollars an hour cheaper. So I don't want to talk bad about the registry. We actually have both, so, but more and more people these days. In my 10 years here, I would say when I started, our registry was probably at least 80% of our business, and it is easily 50-50 now. The other, so all companies have some sort of minimums. For the most part, we have a 4-hour minimum. So you want to ask what the minimum is. And you also, not only, so we have a shift minimum, it has to be 4 hours, but a lot of companies also have weekly minimums. So we thankfully do not, but it might be a 4-hour minimum for one day, but also 12 hours for the week. So you want to ask what the minimums are. There are companies out there that do less than 4 hours. And even we, in certain senior living facilities that we have enough clients, we can do as little as an hour, but as far as private homes go, we have a 4-hour minimum, but no weekly minimum. The other big thing is the nurse assessment. For us, that is included in the hourly rate, so there's no charge. So there's an initial assessment, and then they have to be updated every 90 days. So some companies do charge for that nurse assessment. So you want to get that, you want to ask that question up front as well. Because some of these fees can add up, even if the hourly rate's cheaper. Because a lot of times people just go with the cheapest hourly rate, but then there's all these extra fees involved, and it does add up. The other, it's kind of, well, not really connected, but holiday rate. What are the holidays in it? So we do, I think there's 7 days that we pay our caregivers time and a half for. Most of them are obvious, Christmas, Easter. The only one that majority of our caregivers are female, so we actually do it for Mother's Day as well. So you do want to get the holiday rates. And then also overtime. Overtime is a big one because it's either going to either you're going to have to pay for the overtime or the company is going to schedule it in a way that no caregiver works over 40 hours, which hurts the consistency. That means you're going to have more caregivers. So you might have somebody that, if you have a 24-hour case, you might have one caregiver that works 3 days a week, 12 hours, and then another caregiver that works a couple of days a week, and another caregiver. So instead of having somebody, we usually try to set it up to where Monday through Friday, you have 2 caregivers on a 24-hour case, a daytime person and a nighttime person. And thankfully, we're big enough to where we actually don't pass that. We pay our caregivers, obviously, time and a half for anything over 40 hours, but we do not pass that on to our clients. But it's a lot of money that we spend on that. So a lot of companies can't afford to do that, so that's a big question to ask. Background checks come up a lot. I get asked that a lot, but I can't imagine there's a company out there that's not doing background checks at this point. I would hope not, at least. But that question does come up a lot. I'm trying to think. And there are companies, we don't do it because we only hire certified nursing assistants, but that kind of third model was the companionship. Sorry, going back to the beginning. There are companies that do charge a couple dollars less an hour, and it's just strictly companionship. They can't do any hands-on care. So if that's all you need, there are companies out there that do that.
Okay, great. So the last topic we're going to discuss is staying active and engaged. So it doesn't matter if your home is perfect for you as you age, or if you have access to transportation and in-home care. You find that you long for social contact with other people. A lot of times people that age get very lonely, and I hear that when you stay socially active, you live a longer life.
Lots of ways these days that you can stay active in the community, where you can really engage with other folks that have the same type of interests. Senior centers these days, I've found, and I spend lots of time in them, are way more like activity centers than what we used to think of as senior centers. Lots of them now have travel clubs. Pickleball is huge right now. I'm playing pickleball somewhat. My dad has gotten me into this. Senior centers are having pickleball clubs. You're seeing leagues pop up. That's a really great way that people are staying active these days. If you're looking for volunteer opportunities, you know, a lot of years of background for me is in senior living. Senior living communities, independent living, assisted living, are always looking for volunteers to help with events, run socials that they're having, work happy hours, lots of fun things that you can get involved with. I've also been seeing at some of these activity centers, senior centers, are exercise groups that will meet, whether it be at the senior center or outside in the neighborhood, and they'll walk trails together. Tom alluded to it earlier. It's great out right now, so it is that season to be able to get out and stay active. But way better to do that, you know, with a couple people, with a group. It kind of makes it easier to stay motivated with those type of things. But all really good ways to stay engaged in the community. I think that helps motivate in life in general.
And it's not only just staying active, just the socialization piece. I know some of the seniors, I volunteered at one a couple years ago, they just do lunches together, and it was kind of cool just watching. It was like best friends going out to eat every day, and it was like $2 or whatever. Like the senior centers can offer a discount rate. So it's not only about staying active, but that socialization piece is key as well.
Great, thank you. And is there anything that I haven't touched on that you guys think we should be asking, or you should be answering the question for?
I just think it's about planning. Anybody that's here live, anybody that sees the video is probably thinking about planning. A vast majority of the folks that we work with are in crisis mode. I will just say that. So it's us coming in, kind of working with someone's situation, settling that down, and then planning going forward. But at that point, a lot has already changed. Kind of like Brandon said earlier, when you're doing renovations or modifications, it can look exactly the way you want it to look with the proper planning. It can be elegant, it can look beautiful. So many times, you know, we talk to families about aging in place when a crisis has already happened, and the conversation goes to, well, Medicare may pay for a hospital bed, and that's in the living room, and now we only use the living room. And that's not aging in place. That's not what we look for as far as when we're talking about planning. So you're all doing the right thing. Planning is essential. And really these conversations don't have to be that traumatic when we're looking far enough in the future to plan accordingly.
Okay, great. Now we're going to open it up for questions, and Sherry is going to be the mic runner. So thank you, Sherry.
Sherry's the non-runner.
It's about time it is.
Well, actually, I didn't know I was going to be a mic runner until now, but I have a question for all three of you. Tom had alluded to it. Actually, Tom did speak about it. We heard his answer to that about minimums. But I think it's hugely important to understand there are people in this room or people that are watching or will be hearing this that need different levels of care. It's a process. And it is a scary process. I have a mother-in-law that suffered with Alzheimer's for 20 years and was able to age in place, which was a miracle in and of itself, but the progression of that need. And as someone, a family member, a loved one that's looking to have and provide that help, my question to you is, it has to start for most people, I would imagine, in bite-sized pieces. So Tom, you talked about the minimum. We're looking at renovations to your home. We're looking at what the option group provides as far as service providers that you guys can provide experts, right? The experts out there to eliminate the need to post somewhere, does anybody know of, right? I mean, good grief, who knows what you'll get. So my question is to the two of you that didn't specifically say, and if you did, I apologize because I missed it, but what is the minimum that's necessary for someone to work with you or work with someone to work with you?
Well, for us, there really is no minimum. I mean, we do projects that are $150. We do projects that are tens of thousands of dollars too. There's no minimum. I think what you said, touching a little bit on what Steve said, we call it master planning. We think about what is the ultimate long-term goal. What is? I had the same conversation with people that are looking for a renovation and have young children. We're not talking about a renovation for young children. We're talking about a renovation for teenagers and young adults that are going to be hanging out at this house. They're going to be physically bigger. They need more space. So we talk about master plan. What I'm always thinking about in master planning, and to touch back on the cost issue, is how can we make changes in a progressive way where we're not undoing things that we've already done. So we're not spending money twice. We're not taking things out that we've spent money on. And this can be a progression of things that can happen over time. And sometimes that's years and years, and sometimes it's less than that. So no minimums.
Yeah, good to know.
Similar for us, we actually start with a completely free consult to see if it even makes sense, to see what type of care navigation families might really need. So many times it might be something so simple that we give you a recommendation on the phone and you don't need us to follow your loved one or provide services past that at this point. But then oftentimes we will start service with a family, and we may only have to check in on that family once a month. And that happens for years. We have families that have been with us since 2010 when we started. Some of those families still don't require that much service, physical, hands-on, us being there with them service in the grand scheme of things. So we can do as little or as much as families need when it comes to coordinating their care system.
Thank you, it's good.
I know I talked about the minimums, but your other point about the kind of progression, as you all can imagine, a lot of our clients are very resistant to having extra help in the home. So a lot of times our families, the adult children, will convince mom or dad to maybe have somebody come in once a week, even once a month for a couple hours, 4 hours, just to get used to the idea, knowing that down the road they're going to need more care. And when that happens, we can put that in place. But at least they're used to having somebody in the home, and it kind of gets them used to that idea and like, you know what, this isn't all that bad. I don't have to do the laundry. I don't have to get the clothes out of the washer, and that sort of thing. So just on the progression piece.
Anyone have
a question? Do you deal with the association, like I live in a townhouse and we have an association, where you would have to modify steps to the house to put a ramp? Do you contact the association? Do I have to give permission? And then you submit a plan or whatever?
We run into that situation from time to time, yes. And we, each association is a little different in terms of how they expect communication to go, but I regard it as our job to, at the very least, arm our client with the information that they need. And usually it's a circumstance where I'd be sitting with an architectural committee or whatever the association has in terms of governance on an issue like that and explaining what we're going to do and what we plan to do.
Have you ever found somebody, association, that said, no, you can't do it?
I have.
Mm.
Yeah. But I would tell you that a lot of it has to do with the quality of the endeavor, the care and thought that's put to the endeavor. So, you know, what we want to do is we want to look at the spirit of a neighborhood or spirit of a community of some nature and work along those lines to show an earnest effort to stay with it in keeping with the atmosphere.
Mhm.
And the better we can do that, the more favorable the results tend to be.
Mhm. My other question was,
Oh.
I'm sorry, no, about the stairs where you have the stairway. You know, I guess that's the kind of the model. I would need it, I have 3 floors. So I would need it, you know, from the bed, the bedrooms to the living room, and then washer and dryers in the basement. I mean, I know there's really not much you can do to make it look nice or other than what it is.
With that type of solution, typically not. However, you know, we start thinking about other things. I mean, you'd be surprised in some ways. It's not exactly a highly budget-friendly solution, but
Yeah.
elevators are solutions, and we do a lot of elevators, interior elevators.
I mean, but that must cost a bundle.
Well, it can, but it doesn't always have to.
Really?
It doesn't always have to. It is going to be much more expensive than a chairlift.
Mhm.
You spoke about laundry. I didn't mention laundry as one of my items when I spoke earlier, but laundry is kind of a big deal. I think we should all have concern about walking up and down steps with a laundry basket. So in terms of the type of solution, there's also the frequency of use that we want to be mindful of. So we want to get in and out of our house, we want to get in and out safely, but then we want to understand how often we're doing certain activities. And laundry is, in my household, it's a daily activity.
Mhm.
It's like hourly. It's unbelievable. But it's a frequent activity, and it's one that can be really unsafe. So the first thing I would do, rather than, not to say that access to a basement isn't necessary for some reason, but the first thing I would do is look to say, how infrequently can we make it that you have to go to the basement?
That's what I try to do now. Yeah.
So getting laundry up to the living level, the place where laundry is generated, same level as your master bedroom, same level as your master bath. To get laundry into a space like that you can do is an effort that's worthwhile to consider. So although I didn't mention it, is one of the first things that I look and talk to people about is where are we actually doing the laundry and processing the laundry? Where are we folding? How are we folding? How are we getting it from where we have to go?
Mhm.
So we're not carrying those baskets.
Right, I mean, this kind of reminded me of what I need, like you come down 5 steps, then you turn, so you could put a chairlift in that?
Yes.
Like that?
Good question. We have one here.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch upon the lighting. My mom lives in a 55 and over community. She's 83 and, not very good sight. And it's so dark. She's an interior unit and it's extremely dark, and that's just not good for somebody that has a little dementia going on. But we need lighting mainly in her living room. Do you deal with lighting solutions in living rooms?
Absolutely. And, from a construction standpoint, all the really boring stuff that you don't ever hear about, it's actually cost management is what I think about. So we're pretty clever with how we actually get lighting and power to places. We understand how structure works, and we understand how to run wiring so we can minimize the amount of cutting, notching, hatching, and those types of things that we have to do. There are all kinds of different types of solutions, but what we would think about there, and what we want to think about anywhere, is really layering of lighting. So I could do a whole talk on lighting theory and all those types of things, and I'll spare everybody that boredom. But having multiple layers of lighting that allow differential dimming, reflective lighting as opposed to down lighting. We can run into situations with a lot of down lighting where we get upward glare off the floors. That is disorienting. That can cause falls. So we want to think about all those types of things, but I mentioned it. I think it might have even been the first thing I mentioned because it is one of
It's
the most
so
important
important. I
things.
mean, I walk in your house, it's awful.
Yeah.
And I know it's not good,
Yeah.
you know, for her.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay.
Alrighty, so I want to thank everybody for coming today. I really appreciate that. And I just wanted to let you know that we do have this series that I do the second Tuesday of every month, always the same time, always here. And then every month is a different topic. So July's topic is going to be called The Truth About Independent Senior Living. So if you know anyone that would be interested in coming, please let me know. Register them, give me a call, so I can get them on the list to invite. And you do have a flyer, and if you don't have one, there's some in the back of the room. And then the following month after that, I was going to do, so how do I pay for it? Because everybody wants to know, how do you pay for it? So, so don't forget to fill out your evaluation sheets if you could, please. I'd really love to get some honest feedback and everything. That would be great. And if you have bad feedback, just don't give it to me. No, just kidding. And lastly, I do want to thank my educational partners for being here today, as well as my panelists. And please, if you haven't seen them, come back, find out what they do. And if you have any personal questions, that's just for, like, you don't need to ask everybody else. They're open for any questions at that time as well. So thank you very much.